Thonis-Heracleion. For centuries, Thonis-Heracleion existed in a strange limbo between history and legend. Ancient Greek writers described a vast Egyptian port city at the mouth of the Nile, a place of temples, customs houses, and foreign merchants arriving from across the Mediterranean. Herodotus mentioned it in passing. Later texts associated it with Heracles and Helen of Troy, yet no one could point to its remains. On land, there was nothing. No ruins. No inscriptions. No trace that such a city had ever existed. What we now know is that Thonis-Heracleion was once Egypt's primary international port, thriving for centuries before the founding of Alexandria around 331 BC. Every ship entering the Nile Delta was required to stop there. Taxes were collected. Cargo was inspected. Religious rituals were performed in massive temples dedicated to Ammonius and other deities. The city was built across a network of islands, canals, and harbors, resting on layers of water-saturated clay and silt. Sometime between the 2nd and 1st centuries BC, that foundation failed. Geological studies indicate the region experienced repeated seismic disturbances. Earthquakes, possibly combined with tidal surges or flooding, destabilized the soft sediment beneath the city. The ground underwent soil liquefaction, a process in which solid earth temporarily behaves like a liquid. Buildings lost their support. Entire districts collapsed downward. Over time, the sea claimed what remained. Thonis-Heracleion did not burn. It was not conquered. It simply sank. For more than 1,000 years, the city lay hidden beneath the Mediterranean, sealed under layers of mud and sand. Its disappearance was so complete that many scholars came to believe the ancient accounts were exaggerated or symbolic. A trading hub of that scale, they argued, could not vanish without leaving evidence. They were wrong. In 2000, underwater archaeologist Frank Gaudio and his team began systematic surveys off the coast of Egypt's Nile Delta. Using sonar, magnetometers, and sediment analysis, they detected unnatural formations buried beneath the seabed. What emerged over the following years stunned the archaeological world. Colossal statues over 5 meters tall, temple walls, stone anchors, gold coins, ritual objects, animal sarcophagi, even woven baskets still containing fruit seeds more than 2,400 years old. Inscriptions confirmed the city's name, Thonis to the Egyptians, Heracleion to the Greeks. Yet despite the extraordinary preservation, fundamental questions remain unresolved. Why did such a critical port continue expanding on unstable ground for centuries? Why are signs of collapse uneven, with some districts sinking rapidly while others settled slowly? And why do ancient sources fail to record a clear account of its destruction? Thonis-Heracleion is no longer a myth. Its ruins are real, mapped, and rising from the seabed piece by piece. But the exact sequence of events that erased one of Egypt's most important cities, and how its people experienced that final transformation from land to sea, remains one of archaeology's most haunting unanswered mysteries. Linear. The tablets are small, unassuming pieces of clay. Some are no larger than a modern smartphone. Others are fragments, broken long ago and baked hard by accidental fires. They were discovered in palace ruins on Crete, stacked in storage rooms, dropped in corridors, sealed beneath collapsed walls. And written across them is a script no one alive can read. Linear A is the written language of the Minoan civilization, used roughly between 1800 and 1450 BC during Crete's Bronze Age peak. The symbols are clean and deliberate, arranged in neat horizontal lines. They resemble another script found on the island, Linear B, so closely that early archaeologists assumed the two were related in a simple way. That assumption turned out to be deeply misleading. In 1952, Linear B was deciphered by Michael Ventris and shown to represent an early form of Greek. It uses syllabic signs rather than letters, and once its phonetic values were identified, thousands of administrative records suddenly became readable. Lists of goods, names of officials, inventory tallies. Many researchers believed Linear A would fall next. It didn't. Despite sharing visual similarities with Linear B, Linear A encodes a completely different language. When scholars apply linear B phonetic values to linear A symbols, the resulting words do not match Greek or any known ancient language. The grammar behaves differently. The word endings don't align. Repeated sequences refuse to resolve into intelligible meaning. What makes this more frustrating is how much material exists. Linear A appears on hundreds of tablets, stone libation tables, pottery fragments, and ritual objects. Many texts seem clearly administrative, with recurring symbols suggesting numbers, commodities, or standardized transactions. Others appear religious, possibly recording offerings to deities whose names we still don't know. Yet none of it unlocks. One major obstacle is context. Linear A texts are short and formulaic, lacking long narrative passages that might reveal grammar or syntax. There is no known bilingual inscription, no equivalent of a Rosetta Stone. And the Minoan language itself left no confirmed descendants. When Mycenaean Greeks took control of Crete around 1450 BC, Linear A disappeared, replaced by Linear B almost immediately. Even the identity of the language remains uncertain. Some scholars have proposed links to Anatolian languages. Others suggest connections to Semitic or entirely lost language families. None of these hypotheses have gained broad acceptance because the internal evidence refuses to cooperate. Modern technology has not solved the problem. Statistical analysis, pattern recognition, and computational linguistics have all been applied. They confirm structure. They confirm consistency. They confirm intentional writing. But meaning remains out of reach. Linear A represents the voice of Europe's earliest advanced civilization, frozen in symbols we can see but not understand. We know who wrote it. We know when they used it. We know roughly what kinds of things they were recording. What we do not know is what they were saying. Until that barrier breaks, the Minoans remain, in a very real sense, silent. Roman dodecahedrons. They are small enough to hold in one hand, yet no one knows why they exist. Roman dodecahedrons are hollow bronze objects, each formed with 12 flat, pentagonal faces. Every face contains a circular hole, and the holes are never the same size. At each corner sits a small knob, carefully cast and symmetrically placed. More than 100 of these objects have been discovered across Europe, from Britain and Gaul to Germany and the Balkans. Not a single one has been found in Italy. Archaeological dating places most Roman dodecahedrons between the 2nd and 4th centuries CE. They are often recovered from military zones, frontier regions, or buried hoards, sometimes alongside coins and valuable objects. A few have been found in graves, suggesting personal significance. Yet no Roman text, illustration, or inventory ever mentions them. For an empire that documented nearly everything, this silence is striking. The objects show no signs of wear consistent with tools. They are too delicate for heavy labor, yet too precisely made to be casual ornaments. The varying hole sizes suggest measurement, but no known Roman measuring system corresponds cleanly to the dimensions. Wax residue has been detected on a small number of specimens, leading to speculation that they may have been used as candle holders. However, this does not explain the consistent geometry or the effort invested in their manufacture. Other researchers have proposed practical functions. Some suggest they were knitting devices used to create gloves, based on experiments producing fingered textiles by threading yarn through opposing holes. Others argue they were range-finding instruments or surveying tools, possibly used by Roman engineers or military units. None of these theories accounts for all known examples, and experimental results remain inconsistent. Religious or ritual use has also been considered. Their symmetry, scarcity, and lack of standardization could indicate ceremonial objects, possibly tied to regional cult practices. But no iconography or inscriptions link dodecahedrons to Roman religion, and their presence in utilitarian contexts complicates that explanation. A small fringe group has proposed far more speculative ideas, ranging from astronomical instruments to advanced technological devices. These claims have no supporting evidence and are not accepted by mainstream archaeology. What makes the mystery compelling is not exotic speculation, but the absence of reliable answers. Every Roman dodecahedron follows the same basic design, yet no two are identical. They were clearly meaningful to the people who made them, valuable enough to cast in bronze, and important enough to keep or bury. Still, their purpose vanished with the people who understood them. They are not toys. They are not random art. They are deliberate objects from a highly organized civilization that forgot to tell us what they were for. And nearly 2,000 years later, that omission remains unexplained. Plain of Jars. Across the high plateaus of northern Laos, massive stone vessels rise from the grass as if placed there deliberately and then abandoned. They are carved from sandstone, limestone, and granite, some standing nearly 10 feet tall and weighing several tons. Thousands of them are scattered across the landscape, arranged in clusters that range from a single jar to fields containing hundreds. Their surfaces are weathered, cracked, and coated in lichen, yet their forms remain unmistakably intentional. These objects date to the Iron Age, with recent scientific analysis suggesting that at least some were carved as early as 1240 BC. That alone raises immediate questions, because the human remains found nearby are significantly younger. The jars appear to predate the burials, meaning they were not created specifically for the dead whose bones later appeared around them. Local legend offers a simple explanation. The jars, according to oral tradition, were drinking vessels used by giants who once ruled the region, celebrating victory with rice wine. Archaeologists, however, have pursued a more restrained theory. Excavations have uncovered bones, teeth, and burial goods around many jars, leading to the hypothesis that they were used in mortuary practices, possibly as part of a complex funerary ritual involving decomposition or secondary burial. Even this explanation leaves major gaps. Very few jars contain remains inside them. Most bones are found buried nearby, not within the vessels themselves. No inscriptions explain their use. No tools definitively linked to their carving have been discovered, and no settlement of sufficient size has been found to indicate where the people who created them lived. The question of transportation may be even more difficult. Many jars were carved from stone quarried kilometers away and moved across rugged, mountainous terrain. There is no clear evidence of roads, ramps, or machinery capable of transporting such heavy objects in large numbers. Each jar required significant labor, planning, and coordination, yet the civilization responsible remains largely invisible. Research has been further complicated by modern history. During the Vietnam War, northern Laos was subjected to extensive aerial bombing by the United States. Large portions of the Plain of Jars are still contaminated with unexploded ordnance. As a result, many sites cannot be safely excavated, surveyed, or even approached. Entire fields of jars remain off-limits, frozen in place by 20th century conflict. Despite decades of study, no consensus exists. The jars are too numerous to be symbolic art, too standardized to be random, and too labor-intensive to be trivial. They represent a massive, organized effort by a society that left behind almost nothing else. The Plain of Jars stands as a landscape-size question mark. We can date the stone. We can map the sites. We can propose theories. But the people who shaped, moved, and arranged these enormous vessels have left no clear explanation, and much of their world remains inaccessible, buried beneath both time and unexploded war. Nazca Lines. In the arid plains of southern Peru, enormous figures stretch across the desert floor, etched directly into the earth. A hummingbird with wings wider than a football field, a spider longer than a city bus, straight lines that run for miles without deviation. These shapes were not painted or built. They were carved by removing roughly 12 to 15 inches of dark, oxidized stone, exposing the pale ground beneath. And they were made between roughly 1 and 700 AD by the Nazca people. From the ground, many of the lines are nearly impossible to recognize. They intersect, overlap, and vanish into the distance. Only from above do the figures fully emerge, which immediately raises a problem. The Nazca people had no known means of flight. No towers. No mountains positioned to provide clear aerial views of the complete designs. Yet the proportions are precise, the curves deliberate, and the straight lines remarkably accurate. Early researchers proposed that the Nazca Lines formed a giant astronomical calendar. Some lines appear to align with solstices or the rising and setting of certain celestial bodies. This idea gained traction in the mid-20th century, suggesting the desert functioned as a massive observatory. However, later surveys showed that many alignments occur by chance, and not all figures correspond to astronomical events. The theory explains some lines, but not the system as a whole. More recent research has shifted toward ritual explanations. Archaeological evidence suggests the Nazca people conducted ceremonial processions along certain lines. Pottery, offerings, and iconography link the figures to water, fertility, and agriculture. In one of the driest regions on Earth, rainfall meant survival. Some scholars now believe the lines were part of ritual pathways meant to appeal to deities associated with water and mountains. Even this explanation leaves unresolved questions. Why create animal figures so large they cannot be fully seen from the ground? Why combine organic shapes with thousands of straight lines, trapezoids, and spirals? And why maintain them over centuries, repeatedly clearing debris to keep the designs visible? The engineering itself adds another layer of mystery. The lines have survived for nearly 2,000 years due to the region's stable climate, minimal rainfall, and low wind. But creating them still required careful planning, coordination, and surveying. Stakes and ropes were likely used, yet no detailed plans or tools have ever been found. Outlandish theories involving extraterrestrials have been widely rejected by researchers, but the persistence of such ideas reflects a deeper issue. Even the most grounded explanations fail to account for the full scope and intent of the Nazca Lines. We know how they were made. We know when they were made. We even know who made them. What remains unclear is why a civilization invested such extraordinary effort into images meant to be seen almost by no one. Guanabara Bay. In 1982, beneath the murky waters of Guanabara Bay near Rio de Janeiro, a claim surfaced that threatened to rewrite the history of transatlantic exploration. Acting on information provided by local fishermen, American shipwreck explorer Robert Marks announced that he had located several ceramic vessels embedded in the seabed. They were twin-handled amphoras, a distinctive container type widely used throughout the Roman world for transporting oil, wine, and grain. Marks reported that the amphoras were heavily encrusted with barnacles and partially buried in sediment, suggesting long-term submersion. Based on their shape and construction, he argued they were Roman in origin, possibly dating to the 1st century CE. If true, this would imply Roman contact with the coast of South America more than a millennium before the arrival of the Portuguese in 1500. The claim immediately drew skepticism. Roman amphoras are well documented, but they are also widely collected, traded, and reused in later centuries. Critics pointed out that without controlled excavation, stratigraphic documentation, or laboratory analysis, the objects could not be reliably dated. Amphoras could have been transported to Brazil in modern times as ballast, cargo, or even discarded replicas. Before further investigation could occur, the situation escalated. The Brazilian government accused Marks of unauthorized artifact removal and banned him from the country. Underwater exploration in the area was halted, and the site was closed to independent researchers. Marks responded publicly, alleging that the Brazilian Navy deliberately dumped sediment over the location to avoid international scrutiny and the historical implications of a Roman discovery. No comprehensive archaeological survey of the alleged site has ever been completed. The amphoras were not subjected to peer-reviewed analysis, and no associated Roman materials, such as ship timbers, tools, inscriptions, or additional cargo, were documented. Without contextual evidence, the objects alone cannot establish a Roman presence. Mainstream historians and archaeologists remain unconvinced. There is no credible evidence of Roman ships capable of sustained Atlantic crossings to the Americas, and no Roman records suggest voyages beyond the eastern Atlantic. Known Roman maritime trade was extensive, but it remained confined to Europe, North Africa, and parts of Asia. Yet the controversy persists because the case was never resolved through proper study. The artifacts were not conclusively debunked, nor were they properly verified. Political intervention, accusations of misconduct, and restricted access left the question suspended rather than answered. Today, Guanabara Bay occupies an uneasy place between speculation and dismissal. The idea of Roman contact with Brazil remains highly unproven, unsupported by accepted archaeological standards. But the absence of definitive investigation ensures that the claim, however unlikely, has never been fully laid to rest. Cleopatra's tomb. Cleopatra VII is one of history's most famous rulers. Her life is chronicled in detail. The daughter of the Ptolemaic dynasty, her alliances with Julius Caesar and later Mark Antony, her political maneuvering, and her dramatic death in 30 BC. Yet for all that is known about her life, one of the most fundamental questions remains unanswered. Where was she buried? Ancient sources suggest that Cleopatra and Mark Antony were interred together, in accordance with Egyptian royal and romantic traditions. They had died in the wake of defeat at the Battle of Actium, and Cleopatra's final resting place was intended to honor both their status and their enduring partnership. But despite centuries of search, no tomb has ever been confirmed. Alexandria, her capital and cultural center of the Mediterranean world, is an obvious candidate. It was a thriving city of temples, palaces, and monuments during her reign, and it housed the dynastic necropolises of the Ptolemies. Archaeologists believe a royal tomb may have been located within one of the city's temple complexes, but much of ancient Alexandria has been submerged or destroyed by earthquakes, tsunamis, and centuries of urban development. In particular, the devastating tsunami of 365 AD reshaped the coastline, sinking large portions of the city beneath the Mediterranean. Any tomb within the ancient city limits may have been claimed by the sea, leaving behind fragments or nothing at all. Other theories point to sites in the Nile Delta, possibly temples dedicated to Isis and Osiris. Cleopatra identified herself with Isis, goddess of life and magic, while Mark Antony associated himself with Osiris, god of the afterlife. If the couple chose to align their burial with these deities, their tomb could have been located in a religious precinct now lost or hidden beneath centuries of sediment, agriculture, or modern construction. Evidence is scarce, and definitive archaeological exploration has yet to be possible. Excavations have occasionally uncovered objects and fragments that hint at royal burial practices, but none can be conclusively linked to Cleopatra or Antony. Coins, inscriptions, and remnants of palatial architecture provide clues, but the tomb itself remains elusive. The mystery of Cleopatra's final resting place sits alongside other legendary lost tombs of history. The burial sites of Alexander the Great, whose mausoleum vanished under layers of city construction, and Genghis Khan, whose resting place was deliberately concealed, share the same intrigue. In each case, history, legend, and natural disaster combine to erase the physical traces of figures whose lives are otherwise well documented. Cleopatra's tomb, whether beneath the sands of the Nile Delta, submerged beneath Alexandria's harbor, or lost in some temple yet to be discovered, continues to captivate archaeologists, historians, and the public alike. Its absence is not merely a gap in the record. It is a profound reminder of how even the most prominent lives can leave behind mysteries that endure millennia. Yonaguni Monument. Beneath the turquoise waters off Japan's Yonaguni Island lies a formation that has captivated archaeologists, divers, and the curious alike. The structure stretches at least 165 feet in length and 65 feet in width, its terraces descending in sharp, geometric steps that resemble a pyramid or ziggurat. Flat planes intersect at near-perfect right angles. Staircases, ledges, and protrusions appear to have been carefully carved, yet the entire site is submerged, lying between 15 and 25 meters below the surface. Its discovery in the early 1980s sparked a debate that continues to divide experts to this day. Some researchers propose that the Yonaguni Monument represents the remnants of a lost civilization. According to this theory, The structure predates recorded Japanese history, perhaps even reaching back to the end of the last ice age, around 10,000 years ago, when sea levels were significantly lower. Its sharp edges, terraces, and apparent symmetry suggest deliberate shaping by human hands. Certain patterns on the rock surfaces, including channels, carvings resembling terraces, and formations that resemble roads or walls, have been interpreted as architectural features. Supporters of this idea argue that Yonaguni may be evidence of an advanced prehistoric society, now entirely submerged by rising oceans. Skeptics, however, insist the formation is entirely natural. They argue that the sharp angles and terraces are the result of tectonic activity, fracturing, and erosion in sedimentary rock. The region sits along active fault lines, and earthquakes, along with ocean currents and repeated submersion, could plausibly carve flat plains and right-angle structures. They point out that while certain features appear architectural, they could easily form through natural processes, a phenomenon known as pseudoarchaeology when misinterpreted as human construction. Divers have reported other intriguing elements in the surrounding seabed: boulders arranged in patterns, stone blocks that seem intentionally placed, and unusual formations that suggest pathways. Some claim to see faint markings resembling carvings, while others argue that these are nothing more than erosion and shadows playing tricks in the underwater light. Carbon dating and sediment analysis have yet to provide definitive evidence for human involvement, leaving the site's origin unresolved. Whether natural or man-made, the Yonaguni Monument challenges assumptions about early human capability and our understanding of prehistoric history. Its existence raises questions about rising sea levels, forgotten civilizations, and the potential for human habitation in areas now submerged. Japan's underwater pyramid continues to draw divers, researchers, and enthusiasts searching for answers, standing as a silent enigma beneath the waves. More than just a curiosity, the monument embodies a tantalizing uncertainty. It is either a remarkable work of an unknown civilization or one of nature's most precise and puzzling creations. Either way, it remains one of the world's most compelling underwater mysteries. Sacsayhuaman. Perched above the city of Cusco, the heart of the Inca Empire, lies a monumental structure that has fascinated historians, archaeologists, and engineers for centuries. Sacsayhuaman is not a palace, not a temple in the conventional sense, but a vast complex of precisely cut stones, forming terraces, walls, and enclosures that defy simple explanation. Early Spanish chroniclers assumed it was a fortress designed to protect the city below. Later research suggested a more ceremonial purpose, perhaps as a site for religious processions or astronomical observations. Regardless of its function, the architectural mastery is undeniable. What makes Sacsayhuaman remarkable is the precision of its stonework. The walls are composed of massive boulders, some weighing more than 100 tons, yet each stone fits snugly against its neighbors with astonishing accuracy. There is no mortar holding them together. Gaps between stones are often less than a millimeter, and the surfaces align perfectly, creating walls that have withstood centuries of earthquakes that devastated nearby buildings. The irregular shapes of the stones only add to the mystery. Each block appears custom-fitted, as if the builders shaped the stones while positioning them, rather than carving them in a separate quarry and hoping they would align. Moving these massive stones presents a separate enigma. The Incas had no wheeled vehicles, no draft animals capable of transporting such weight, and no written instructions for construction. Scholars have proposed combinations of ramps, levers, manpower, and ropes, yet none fully explain how stones of such size were quarried, transported, and assembled with such precision. Experiments have replicated parts of the process, but the scale and accuracy achieved at Sacsayhuaman remain unmatched. The walls themselves form a zigzag pattern, a design whose purpose is still debated. Some suggest military strategy. The angles allow defenders to repel attackers more effectively. Others point to ritualistic or symbolic reasoning, possibly representing the teeth of a puma, an important creature in Inca mythology. The terraces created by the walls also suggest a sophisticated understanding of engineering and drainage, preventing erosion in an area prone to heavy rainfall. Sacsayhuaman challenges conventional ideas about ancient construction. It is a combination of engineering genius, artistic expression, and logistical mastery. The sheer weight of the stones, the precision of the fit, and the unknown methods used to transport and assemble them make it one of the most compelling mysteries of the Inca civilization. Even today, modern engineers examine the walls in awe, unable to fully recreate the techniques used nearly 600 years ago. Sacsayhuaman is not merely a relic of the past. It is a testament to human ingenuity, a puzzle of stone whose secrets remain firmly locked, waiting for answers that may never come. Stonehenge. On the windswept plains of Salisbury, England, an arrangement of massive stones rises from the earth, marking one of prehistory's most enduring enigmas. Construction at Stonehenge began roughly 5,000 years ago, long before the Bronze Age, in a period when the surrounding landscape was dotted with small farming communities and scattered wooden structures. The site evolved over centuries, with successive generations transporting, shaping, and erecting stones in phases that span millennia. Archaeological investigation has revealed much about Stonehenge's construction. The larger sarsen stones, some weighing upwards of 25 tons, were quarried roughly 20 miles to the north, while smaller bluestones, each weighing between 2 and 5 tons, originated from the Preseli Hills in southwest Wales, nearly 150 miles away. How Neolithic people transported these stones over such distances remains a question. Experiments suggest a combination of rollers, sledges, and waterways may have been used, but no method fully accounts for the scale and precision achieved. Excavations and isotope analyses confirm that Stonehenge also functioned as a burial site. Cremated remains, dating back to the earliest phases of construction, suggest that individuals of high social or ritual significance were interred here. Grave goods are rare, but the presence of human remains indicates that death and remembrance played a role in the monument's purpose. Beyond burials, Stonehenge's true significance has long puzzled researchers. The arrangement of stones aligns with solar events such as the summer and winter solstices, implying an astronomical function, possibly marking the passage of seasons or guiding agricultural cycles. Some anthropologists have proposed ceremonial or religious uses, including rites connected to ancestor worship or fertility. Others suggest that the site may have had therapeutic significance, with people traveling to Stonehenge to seek healing, possibly drawn by the stones themselves or by the rituals conducted among them. Despite centuries of study, fundamental questions remain. Why were these particular stones chosen, quarried from distant regions? What inspired the precise, circular, and horseshoe formations? How did a society without written language coordinate such complex construction over generations? Even today, modern surveys detect subtle features, post holes, pits, and smaller stone arrangements that hint at functions yet to be fully understood. Stonehenge stands as a testament to human ingenuity and ritual expression, a physical record of Neolithic life that continues to inspire awe. Its stones have been studied, mapped, and analyzed, yet their purpose eludes full explanation. The monument combines engineering, astronomy, burial practices, and ceremonial meaning in ways that remain partially hidden. Even now, after thousands of years, Stonehenge keeps its secrets, challenging every generation to understand the minds that shaped it and the world it was meant to reflect.